Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 9. Dillinger's body. John Dillinger began his life of crime at a young age. He was just 20 years old when he decided to steal a car near Mooresville, Indiana. He went for a joyride and was nearly killed by the police. Dillinger enlisted in the U.S. Navy just so he wouldn't get arrested. After a few months shoveling coal on a battleship, he went AWOL. John spent a few days in solitary confinement when he was captured and then deserted the military for good in December 1923. He was sent to prison in 1924 for robbing an elderly grocer. He was in and out of jail for the next 8.5 years. The notorious gangster mostly robbed grocery stores and restaurants. It wasn't until 1933 that he decided to up the ante and started robbing banks. It was that year that his crime spree earned him a reputation as the most wanted gangster in America. In the 1930s, John Dillinger was more famous than half of Hollywood. His face was plastered on newspapers across the nation. It was hard for him to go anywhere without being recognized. That's how he was arrested in Tucson, Arizona in January 1934 by a few people who recognized his face. But he only stayed in jail for about a month before he escaped using a wooden gun that he'd painted black with shoe polish. He had such a problem with being recognized that after his escape from prison, he underwent plastic surgery to get a facelift. John had moles and scars removed, and his fingerprints were burned off with chemicals. Dillinger was sold out by a friend of his named Anna Sage. She turned him over to the FBI for the reward money. He was killed at 10:30 p.m. after watching the new Clark Gable film at Chicago's Biograph Theater. The FBI killed him in a hail of bullets. Afterward, his body was viewed by thousands of spectators. This photograph was taken as a mob of curious fans gathered at the funeral home to gawk at his corpse. An estimated 5,000 people showed up just to see his body in its coffin. Number 8. The Tombstone Pterodactyl. In the American Southwest during the 1800s, there were a lot of weird stories being whispered around campfires. The Native Americans had been telling tales of thunderbirds for centuries, and now the newcomers to the West were telling similar stories. People had been seeing gigantic bird-like monsters in the skies over the Wild West. They looked like huge flying reptiles, and they scared the settlers cold in their boots. On April 26, 1890, the Tombstone epitaph claimed a winged creature had been discovered by a pair of ranchers near the Huachuca Mountains in Arizona. The ranchers supposedly saw the monster flying through the sky and followed it on horseback. It was so exhausted that the winged beast could only fly in brief bursts before needing to rest. Once the cattlemen got close enough, they blasted the creature with their rifles. The flying beast was killed and dragged back to the ranch. The story has changed a lot over the years. Some accounts say the flying monstrosity was 92 feet long, with a wingspan of 160 feet. That would make it one of the largest creatures to ever take to the skies. The ranchers said it had eyes the size of dinner plates, its wings covered in a thin, translucent membrane. The men supposedly took a photograph with the creature after they killed it. In 1963, cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson claimed he had a copy of the photo but lost it. A few strange photographs have cropped up over the years. Pictures of Wild West cowboys with giant moths and huge pterodactyls. But nobody knows which photo might really show the tombstone beast. Most experts think it's just a fairy tale, and the photo never even existed. Number 7. Virginia Oldoini. Louis Daguerre was the creator of the daguerreotype. It was the first publicly available photography system that became popular in the 1840s. It was not a camera as you might think. The system consisted of a polished sheet of copper, a light-tight box, and a lot of chemical vapors. The polished sheet was sensitized using iodine vapors and bromine. Then the sheet was put inside of a camera mechanism, and exposure was used to capture an image. The plate would then be placed on some heated mercury dunes for the image to develop. It was a long way from modern disposable cameras, though still an excellent invention. A photographer could create hundreds of portraits using the daguerreotype. The invention led to a woman named Virginia Oldoini gaining the title of the most photographed woman in history. Virginia was born in Florence, Tuscany in 1837. She married the Count of Castiglione at 17 years old. This was so long ago that Italy was still trying to become an independent and unified kingdom. Virginia's cousin was Victor Emmanuel II, the King of Sardinia. In 1855, she traveled to France and had an affair with Napoleon III. It was a huge scandal, causing her husband to separate himself from her. When she went back to Italy, she briefly exiled herself in 1858. During her exile, she had a romantic entanglement with King Victor Emmanuel II, her own cousin. By 1861, Virginia was living strictly in Paris. She was a member of high Parisian society and dabbled in the uppermost social circles. She had affairs with many important men. Virginia's affluence led her to Pierre Louis Pierson and the Mayer Brothers photography studio. He was responsible for taking photographs of the most important people in France, including Emperor Napoleon III. The photographer and Virginia got along very well. He photographed her from about 1856 until the final years of her life in the 1890s. By the time Virginia had turned into an old recluse who refused to leave her home, they had taken hundreds of photographs together. Nobody knows exactly how many, but in 1913, 14 years after Virginia died at the age of 62, art collector Robert de Montesquiou gathered a collection of her photographs. He managed to collect 433 of them, which he donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. There were likely many more never recovered. Virginia is believed to be the first woman who was mass photographed. Number 6. The Alligator Farm. In 1907, Joseph Campbell brought an alligator farm from Hot Springs, Arkansas to Los Angeles. The farm made money by renting vicious reptiles to the motion picture industry to be used in films. In May 1953, the farm relocated again to Buena Park in Orange County. They had snapping turtles, giant tortoises, and a whole lot of alligators. When the place first opened, you could get in for only 25 cents. You could purchase alligator handbags in the gift shop. Parents could also take photographs of their kids riding on the backs of hungry alligators. It became one of the most popular tourist attractions in Los Angeles. People took pictures of their children standing just inches away from the mouths of dozens of gators. One of the most popular things to do was to have an alligator picnic. People would sit around a wooden table half submerged in a pool and eat lunch while crocodiles swam around their feet. It was a completely unregulated park that allowed people to do pretty much whatever they wanted with the animals. Such a thing would be unthinkable today, but this was the 1950s. The photographs of LA residents having alligator picnics are a great reminder of how relaxed the rules really used to be. Number 5. The Cooper family falling body photo. In the middle of the 1950s, the Cooper family bought an old house in Texas and moved in. On their first night in the house, Mr. Cooper took a photograph of his family to commemorate their new home. Sitting at the dining table was his wife, their 2 sons, and his mother. The photograph he took that day shows the family smiling. They were happy, grinning ear to ear in their new house. Some time passed before Mr. Cooper took the roll of film to be developed at the local pharmacy. When he picked up the pictures, he was shocked to find the photograph he'd taken of his family at the dinner table contained somebody else. The picture showed a human body falling from the ceiling as if it were about to drop onto the dinner table. The person in the picture appeared to be a male. They were wearing a simple white undergarment, and the body appeared to either be in the process of falling or looked to be hanging from the ceiling by their feet. Mr. Cooper had no idea who the person in the picture was. Could it have been a ghost? Was it the person who had owned the house before? There were a lot of questions and no answers. This photograph appeared on the internet around 2009. Some say it's fake, and others think it's the result of double exposure. Nobody really knows what the true story is behind the Cooper family body. Number 4. The Watertown Ghosts. In 1925, an oil tanker named SS Watertown got into a terrible accident. 2 crewmen were killed by suffocation and given a burial at sea near the Panama Canal. Their names were James Courtney and Michael Meehan. After they were dumped in the ocean, the crew on board the ship supposedly saw their faces floating in the dark air. It became so creepy that one of the sailors on board made it his job to catch a photograph of the apparitions. The sailor managed to take a single photo showing the 2 spectral faces of the dead seamen. The photo was so shocking that it was put on display at the offices of city services in New York City. Paranormal enthusiasts investigated the case. The picture was picked apart by alleged experts on the undead. Everyone in the 1920s was convinced the two dead sailors were immortalized in the photograph. Nobody knows if the faces in the photograph are real or if they were somehow doctored 100 years ago. But the other details of the story are true. Meehan and Courtney were working within a cofferdam when a jet opened and suffocated them with gas. These sailors really did die. It's entirely plausible their spirits briefly lingered aboard the tanker. Number 3. The Mothman returns. In 2016, a man was driving in Point Pleasant when he saw a monster in the sky. He had recently moved to the city and was shocked to see what looked like a man with terrifying beast wings flying overhead at night. He managed to take a photo of the creature, which he sent to the local WSAZ news station. This man believed that he captured a picture of the Mothman, the legendary creature involved in the Silver Bridge disaster 50 years ago. The Silver Bridge disaster took place on December 15, 1967. The suspension bridge had been built in 1928 to connect Point Pleasant, West Virginia, with Gallipolis in Ohio, spanning the Ohio River. The bridge collapsed during rush hour traffic, killing 46 people. 2 of the victims were never discovered. The official investigation into the incident pointed to the cause of collapse being the failure of an eye-bar in the suspension chain. The load on the bridge was too heavy, causing it to collapse. In the days before the bridge was destroyed, people in Point Pleasant reported seeing a strange creature. It was described as a man with moth wings, a cryptid monstrosity. Many believed the Mothman to be the harbinger of death, a warning that the disaster was going to take place. But could the Mothman still be around? Does this photograph really show the Mothman still at large in West Virginia? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. The Tolchester Whale. In 1877, a small amusement park opened in Tolchester on the Chesapeake Bay. There was a picnic ground and a bathhouse. They even had a merry-go-round that functioned using hand propulsion. The hand organ was pulled by a goat. As steamship travel became more popular in the 1880s, the park expanded. Hotels, restaurants, horse racing, everything you could want from a 19th century fun park. There was a shooting range, a bowling alley, and a small roller coaster. In 1889, a very unusual attraction was added to the park: a dead whale. The Tolchester whale was killed in Cape Cod. The whale was pickled, sold, and taken to Tolchester Beach. The whale was preserved using embalming materials like formaldehyde. Chemical stench permeated from the dead leviathan even as people paid tickets to sit inside its mouth. The amusement park turned the dead whale into a ride. Carpet was installed inside its mouth. It was given all the proper Victorian furnishings, and the whale's enormous maw was turned into a kind of luxurious cavern. There is still a lithograph advertisement kept by the Maryland Historical Society of this ghoulish attraction. It's titled, "Go See the Whale at Tolchester," and shows the huge beast sitting in the sand with a staircase ascending to its open mouth. An article was published on May 30th, 1899 in the Baltimore American newspaper. The article claimed the whale was 75 tons and cost $3,000 to embalm. There are a few bizarre pictures floating around of an enormous whale with its mouth propped open being transported on the back of a truck. This picture could show the legendary Tolchester whale, though it hasn't been authenticated. Number 1. The Nantucket Sea Serpent. Over the summer of 1937, something strange happened in Nantucket. Photographs taken of giant footprints stamped in the sand of beaches started to be published by local newspapers. As anyone who lives in New England likely knows already, the region has a long history of sea serpents. People have been seeing sea monsters off the coast of New England since the first pilgrims came from Europe, probably even before that, but we don't have any written records. The footprint photographs were such a big deal that mainstream scientists became interested. Copies of the pictures were sent for scientific analysis, though bear in mind that people were still skeptical. Dr. W. Reed Blair from the New York Zoological Society agreed to investigate the pictures. However, he was adamant that the tracks could not possibly belong to anything from the sea, nor any land animal from Nantucket Island. Then the creature appeared. A giant monster was spotted on South Beach. Word spread and flocks of people descended on the beach hoping to see a serpent of the deep. Instead, they found an inflatable balloon sea monster. The whole thing had been a hoax set up by a puppeteer named Tony Sarg. He was the one who faked the monster footprints that got the scientific community so riled up. The hoax had been a ploy to direct more business to his puppet shop in town. It didn't work though. Sarg went bankrupt in 1939. He died 3 years later from a ruptured appendix. Thanks for watching. Would you sit in a dead whale's mouth? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know your favorite weird historical photo. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!